So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have a very special evening. It's data interpretation evening, and that's why we brought interesting people on our virtual table, I should say. So, about me, I'm Alona Gareva. I'm co-organizer of PyLadies Amsterdam, and today Bhumika will help us. And then the whole agenda for the day will start with introduction of our short workshop giver, Hamid. He is from Academy. And then we'll have a short break, and then we continue with Q&A with our data experts who actually work in industry. So you will see this from the both sides, not only from the technical part, but as well from the more non-technical part. Okay, so I think we can start now. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to type in, and we will see if the question is relevant. We'll immediately answer it if we have time. If not, then all questions will be answered after Hamid's presentation or during our Q&A session with our data experts. If it sounds good, let's start. So Hamid, take space, introduce yourself, and start the presentation. Good luck. And please unmute yourself as well.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you this evening. And I'm going to introduce myself in a short while in my presentation. So I will jump right into my presentation and you will get to know me in a little bit. All right. So I'm going to share my screen with you.
It's not yet.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Do you see it now? Perfect.
Yes.
All right. So today, I'm going to talk to you about data interpretation and storytelling, which is quite an interesting perspective in data science or data analytics. And I assume, as myself had this problem in the beginning when I was starting to walk in this path, maybe some people would struggle in this area. But today I'm going to help you maybe understand the whole thing a little bit better and have a better view on data interpretation and storytelling. But first thing, I would like to ask you to take maybe a few seconds to go to this website and vote for any of these options that you think is most important factor for data interpretation. Just, it doesn't have to be the correct answer. What is your opinion? Just choose the right one. And I would like to see what is everyone's opinion at the end of this presentation. So I'm gonna just wait a few seconds so you can have access to this QR code or the link. The link is also available in the PDF workshop that PDF file that has been available for you. Okay. I hope many of you could already get to the website and vote, but since the time is short, I have to move on. So I'm gonna continue with the rest of presentation. All right, so I'm Hamid. I'm an assistant professor of information systems at the University of Bern in Switzerland. I have a PhD in information systems, but I also have a background in engineering, industrial and systems engineering. I teach courses like data science for business applications for master students and business intelligence for undergrad students. And I generally do research about human behavior on online social media platforms. And I often apply data science and the techniques and methods related to data science for analyzing data, exploring the data, discovering interesting patterns and information out of the data. And that is generally what I do. well, maybe mostly from an academic perspective or scientific perspective. All right, so at the end of this session, you will be able to have a better view on data interpretation and storytelling, as well as you will be able to explain RFM analysis. This is a concept that I'm going to explain to you in a short while. And then you will be also able to transform data for RFM analysis using Python. This is a part that we will cover in the workshop part after my presentation. And you will be able to conduct RFM analysis using Python and uncover interesting insights which are kind of hidden in the data. So we are going to show you that. But when we want to think about data visualization, why do we do data visualization in general? A lot of people would say we use them to communicate information to other people. Yes, that's true. We use visualization for communication of our findings or communication of the results of the project. But there are other reasons that we use visualization as well. We use visualization in first place to inspect the data, to see whether there are any issues or problems in the data. And that is a very useful tool. It can help us to understand the data and see whether there is any issues so we can fix them. And also we use data visualization to explore the data and try to discover interesting patterns and insight in the data. And at the end, we use visualizations to communicate the results of our project to frontline decision makers and project sponsors and any users that would need to know those results. So these are the general areas. And in today's workshop, you will see any of these applications, how every one of them will apply in data analytics. I thought that it might be good to just go over some of the mostly used data visualization techniques. So for example, we have box plots that they're mostly used to show the distribution of the data. Also, histograms have the same application. They're used for the distribution of the data. They're great tools for inspecting the data and finding issues in the data. We have bar plots and pie charts that are used to show the proportions for different categories in the data. They're quite useful for communicating the results, also for finding interesting insights in the data. Then we have scatter matrix, which is a combination of histograms and scatter plots, what you see on the other side. So scatter plots is a kind of plot that we use to see whether there are any sort of relationship between two variables or two data attributes. And then scatter matrix is a combination of this scatter plot and histogram for all of the variables or attributes that we have in our data, or the ones that we choose. We can have multiple attributes. And then heat map could be a good replacement for a scatter matrix when we are especially dealing with big data. Like there are a lot of attributes to cover, so this can be a good replacement. And then we have line charts that are mostly used, or they're used a lot for time series data. When we want to check the patterns, the change of the patterns over the course of time for a particular data attribute, line charts are a perfect tool. But these are not the only way to use this kind of charts or this kind of visualizations. They might be useful for other kind of applications as well. So I mentioned that we are going to talk about RFM analysis, and I thought that it would be better to just give you a very short idea about what is this RFM analysis. RFM analysis is like a theoretical framework, a conceptually based analysis that we can conduct on our data, which demands some specific kind of transformation in the data, and then it needs some knowledge about this whole concept. And it is very useful when we want to observe some behavioral characteristics of customers or users, or about we want to gain some knowledge about the market. It's very useful in marketing area in general, but it might be useful for other contexts or other areas as well, because it can be open for interpretation. We can interpret our data using this RFM concept, whether it is related to marketing or it could be related to something else. But since it's an open concept, in my opinion, you can apply it in different, concepts. But what do we mean by these three letters, RFM? R is recency. Recency is the interval between the purchase and the time of analysis. Here, the definitions that I have put here are related to our data, which is also related to purchase transactions. And this can be very useful for marketing. You will see how. So recency can be defined as, if we want to think about the time of analysis as today, and we just extract data from the database of a company, we want to look the number of days between today and the last day, the day that the last transaction of this particular customer has been made. So this is like a time interval that shows us when the last transaction has happened. And then we have frequency. The frequency is the number of all of the purchases within a certain period. It can be the whole period that our data covers. And then we have monetary, which is all the money that a customer has spent in our, shop, if we consider we have an online shop, for instance. So these three factors, these three characteristics can be very useful to interpret data, and I will going to show you how. So if you are interested to know more about it and another kind of application, I have put my own paper that I've published a while ago that I used the same concept, but in a different context, not really a product marketing. It's related to banking industry. So if you're interested, you can just check it out. But okay, let's look at the results of your votes. So far 6 people voted, and majority have voted for domain expertise and knowledge. And we have also 33% for statistics and mathematics knowledge. Well, as I said, I wouldn't say there is a correct answer to this question. Based on my personal opinion, all three of them matters. Perhaps domain expertise and domain knowledge could become very important when we want to interpret data in more creative ways. But at the same time, we need to have programming skills, and we need to have statistics and mathematics knowledge, because they help us all together to be able to interpret data in a much better way. So with all that being said, I hope that I could provide enough information for you, and you can be ready for the main thing, which is our workshop content. So this workshop, I have designed it for you based on a business case. So in this business case, we have a problem, and this problem is, imagine the CIO of the company is asking us, all of us are the members of this data science team in this company, and the CIO of the company is asking us to take this data and try to explore the data and find interesting insights and patterns that can help them to generate better targeting strategies for the company. And that is the goal of this project. And we want to do that. And to do that, as a data science team, we decide to focus on this theoretical framework, on RFM characteristics. And we want to transform our data. We want to analyze our data based on these three characteristics to generate interesting insights that can help a company, this online retail store, to generate interesting and better targeting strategies. So let's just jump into the analysis itself. So for this analysis, we need to have, okay, I think something is just gone here. Okay, so I'm not going to explain the code in details because I assume most of you have a background, at least you have some experience with programming with Python, and the time is not that much to go through all of the code in details. So I'm just going to try to focus mostly on how we conduct this analysis and interpret the data. So first step, we need to read the data in Python. So with performing these few lines of code, we're going to open and read the CSV file that is saved in a zip file. And then one of the first things I always do when I read the data is I just want to look at the data, how the data looks like. So I just try to look at the first 2 or 3 rows in my data and try to see what are available to me. So we have different kind of attributes here. We have quantity, we have price, we have customer ID, country, invoice date. So I should think carefully what part of this data can be useful for me to generate the kind of insights that can help the company for generating targeting strategies or marketing strategies. So I'm going to consider that, but first I also need to make sure that this data is clean. No problem is going to stop me from the analysis or cause harm to the analysis. But before I move to the data cleansing part, I would say that from this data set, the kind of attributes that can be useful for us is the quantity, which is basically the quantity of products that are ordered by a customer in a transaction. And this is the price of the product, and the invoice date is the date that the transaction has been made. And then the country is the country that the customer is resided in. So I'm going to focus on these attributes mostly. So for data cleansing, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to make sure that the quantity attribute has a type of integer. So it's going to be an integer number, not a string. And then I'm going to make sure that the invoice date is also a type of date time because I want to use that later on. So I'm going to perform this as well. And then here I put an exercise for you. You can use maybe just a minute to see if you can actually do the same thing for the attribute of price. So if you can just convert this attribute price to the right type. So the price also has to be a numerical value. So meanwhile that you're trying, I will also try with you. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to customize this code. So the type will be different because price has decimal points. Since it has decimal points, I'm going to put it as type float. I'm going to run this. So now the price attribute has the right type. And then we need to make sure that there is no missing values. I'm just going to, for this example, for this case, I'm just going to, for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to get rid of all of the missing values. I don't want to deal with them in a more complicated way. So using this code, I'm just going to remove all of the rows in which there is a missing value. And then after that, I would like to look at the data, the distribution of these data attributes. And as I mentioned earlier, box plots, for instance, are a great tool to look at the distribution of the data attributes. So I'm gonna use a box plot to see the distribution of quantity. And I'm gonna show you why I said visualizations are a great tool. Why we need to use visualization for data inspection. So now if you look at this is a distribution of our data, and this is not right. We have like minus 80,000 for the quantity. Quantity cannot be a negative number. So it shows us that there is an issue with our data. There is also a lot of outliers in our data. All of these dots that you see, they are showing us that there are outliers in our data, so we need to fix those. And I asked you to do the same thing for the other variable, which is the price. So if we want to do the same thing for price, it will be actually quite similar to this box plot. It will be quite similar, and there are some issues for price as well. I'm gonna just skip that. You can try it out yourself. And since there are negative numbers for quantity and price, and there are outliers in the data, I need to get rid of those negative numbers. So the first two lines of code that you see here, they are to get rid of the outliers. I put a condition here to only keep the positive values, the values that are higher than 0 for both quantity and price. And I make a subset of my data based on these two lines. And then I just cut out the higher 10%, higher 10 percentile of my data. So I only keep the data related to 0 to 90 percentile. So these two lines are related to that. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to get rid of the outliers in my data. I'm basically trimming the data and keeping out the outliers. So after I run that part of the code, it's time for data transformation for RFM analysis. So I need to create those three attributes out of this data: recency, frequency, and monetary. Recency has to do with the date. So I need to focus on that part of my data. So I have date time. I have both date and time, but I only want to keep the date part of that invoice date. I don't want to keep the date part. So this line of code, basically what it does is it takes the date part of the that invoice date and store it in a new variable in my clean data. And then I calculate the interval based on the maximum date that I have in my data. I assume the maximum date that I have in my data is the last day that these transactions have been done and the data have become available. So I use that as the first part of the equation, and then I use the date of the transaction as the other part of the equation. So it will give me the interval between the last day of transactions and the day of each transaction in the data. And I only keep the number of days. So it will give me the number of days since the last transaction. So I'm going to run this block. So I ask you to generate the sales from the existing attributes. And sales are basically, if you remember in our data, we have quantity and we have the price for each product. So if we basically just multiply quantity to the price, we can generate the sales. So we can simply do that by clean data. I will choose a name sales You can choose whatever name that you like, but I just put sales here. And then I put clean data dot quantity multiplies to clean data dot price. So basically, with this simple mathematical equation, I generate the sales, which doesn't exist in my original data. So this is how this RFM concept is helping me to generate new information, hidden information that doesn't exist in original data. So I run that line of code. Now I want to see how my code looks like. So I just show the first 3 rows in my data. And as you see, I have the date, a new variable, a new attribute. I have the purchase interval, which is related to recency, the number of days since the last purchase. And then we have the sales, which is basically quantity multiplied to price. So now we need to aggregate the data. So we have all of these transactions, but now we want to aggregate the data based on the customers that we have. So we want to, for instance, find out when was the last time that a particular customer has made a transaction or has purchased a product. So we want to know that as recency, and then we want to know the summation of all of the transactions that this customer has made, how many transactions, and then we want to know how much revenue this customer has generated for us. So for that, we use this line of code to aggregate our data. So we use this group by for aggregation based on which attribute. We want to aggregate our data based on customers. So we use customer ID for aggregation. And then what functions we want to have in our aggregation. We want to have multiple functions for multiple attributes. So we want to have a new variable called recency. And this new variable is generated based on the current attribute that we have in our data, purchase interval. And we want to keep the minimum number in our aggregated data. So this is the function that is going to be performed on this data attribute for this customer. And then for frequency, we want to generate frequency based on sales, or it can be another attribute just because we want to count the number of records of data. So this one has a function of count, and for monetary, we want to make it based on sales, but we want to make it with the function sum. So we want to calculate the summation of all of the sales for each particular customer. So when we run this code, a new data set will be generated called RFM data. Now we want to look at the first 3 rows as usual for this new generated data. You can also try it out, but since there's not much time, I have to do it right now with you. So I will type in RFM data.head 3. So using this code, we can see the first 3 rows in our data to just see how it looks like. All right, now if we look at this new generated data set, we have the customer ID. These are the IDs of each customer. For each customer, we only have 1 record of data now. We have the recency, we have the frequency, and we have the monetary. But what do they mean? If I want to interpret this data set for you, if we look at the first customer, it means that the first customer has made his or her last transaction 2 days ago. If we want to think about the last day of transactions as today, for instance. So the last transaction has been made 2 days ago. This customer has made 140 transactions in total 140 purchases. And in total, this customer has generated a revenue or sales of more than £2,700. What about this second customer? This second customer has made his last transaction 248 days ago. And this customer has only made one purchase in this company, and the total revenue that this customer has generated is £17. So simply, we can compare customers using these three attributes. We can see which customer is more loyal to our business. We can see which customer is generating more revenue or buying or purchasing products more often from our retailer store. This second customer, this is already gone because it's nearly more than half a year or nearly a year that this customer has not made any transactions. So this is also a good perspective to look at customer churn. All right, let's visualize some of these attributes. So first of all, I would like to inspect. So to do inspection, I prefer to use a scatter matrix because the scatter matrix gives me a view of all of the available attributes. So when I run this, it gives me a view for, first of all, the distributions of my three attributes, the new attributes. So this one is for recency, this one is for frequency, and this one is for monetary. And we have the scatter plots that shows the relationship between each pair of variables or attributes. Like this one shows the relationship between recency and monetary. So if I want to look at this plot here, I should see which one probably has better things to say. Which one can give me a better information, a better angle to look? I would say this part of my plot, which is the distribution of recency, is showing me an interesting pattern. And I'm going to tell you why. So I'm going to focus on this particular plot, the histogram of recency. So I'm going to generate that in particular using this block of code. And then I'm going to tell you why. So if you look at this plot, it shows the distribution for recency. So this is the number of days since the last purchase. And this is the number of observations or the number of customers related to our final data set, RFM data set. If you look, there are a lot of customers that have made their last transactions more than 50 days ago. So it's a big part of our population, big part of our customer population. This is not actually a good sign. So it can be a good thing to show to, the business owners or to, the frontline decision makers to show that there is a problem. A lot of customers are not buying products anymore. They have made their last transaction a long time ago. And to show that in a more clear way, I have put it here as an exercise, but since time is very tight, I need to just show you very quickly what do I mean by that. We can do something with this plot to make it even more informative, to make it more interesting, so it can show the frontline decision makers that there is really a problem here and they need to do something about it. So I just want to recreate this same histogram in here, but I want to add something to it that makes it more informative and more interesting. I want to add a median line there. And by that, I mean, I would like to add a line in this plot that shows me where is the median of the population. So I'm going to add PLT XV line. and I'm going to choose the RFM data. I'm going to choose recency here. And then I'm going to use the method median. I'm calculating the median for recency. And then I'm going to identify a color for that, color red. And then I'm going to use a line style. This line style is basically the way the line should look like. I'm choosing dashed. I want a dashed line. And then I'm gonna choose a width for my line. I'm gonna choose 1.5, for instance. So this is the thickness of the line. And then I'm gonna also add a text. For that, I wanna show the line. I'm gonna say, what is this line? So I'm gonna add a text. The first two arguments that I'm putting in are the position of the text in my plot. So I'm gonna put these two positions, and then I'm gonna name it. What is the text that I want to show? And then I want to identify the color red, and oops, I want to identify the font size. And the font size, I would choose 15. And just to make it short, if you like this plot, the outcome of this plot, and you want to have it saved somewhere on your drive to put it in your presentation, you can save that plot using this line of code, using the method save fig, and then you choose a name for your file. I choose recency histogram.png, and then you select the DPI. This is the quality. I choose DPI 300. This is like a good quality for presentation. So now I'm gonna run this, and now you will see what happens. A line will be added here, which shows the median, and it makes our plot more informative. It shows that 50% of our population, 50% of our customers have not made any purchases in more than 50 days. So it's actually even worse, like, because if we want to look at the day 25, even like another portion of customers have not made any purchases in last 3 weeks or last 4 weeks. So this is a good way to show the frontline decision makers that there is this issue. If they want to look at, if they want to target customers, they should target some of these customers. They can send them, for example, some discounts, some vouchers to motivate them to come back to our retail store and shop, because we are losing a lot of customers. All right. And then,
yeah, and also, yeah, it's really cool.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we'll need to summarize what we've done so far. And then for the people, if they want to continue, there are the workshop folder. We shared the link to the GitHub, and there is a workshop folder. So try to make exercise on your own. Don't cheat. And then when you're done, you can consult the solutions folder where Hamid prepared all solutions for you as well.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, if you have any questions, you can also contact me, and I will be happy to help you. All right. So just to wrap it up, I hope that this could be a good example to show you how we inspect the data, how we can use a theoretical or a conceptual framework to interpret the data from a different perspective, to generate hidden information that is not available in the original data, and how we can, generate the kind of visualization and improve those visualization to make a better story to tell to frontline decision makers, because that is very, very important. If you cannot tell a good story, then it may not really bring about good things for frontline decision makers. So I hope that you would also go through the rest of the case and you find it quite useful. Thank you so much for your attention, and sorry that there was not enough time to go through all of them.
It's okay. So it's not enough time, but it's really helpful. Even just simple, such a simple thing, just to add median, but it's immediately show you a lot of useful information and let other people take decision. Okay, so for now, thanks so much. We'll have really short break. Let's do it not 5 minutes. Let's take like for 3 minutes, coffee, tea, water, any extras that is needed. And then we'll continue with our panel. So yeah, let's take this time. And now it's 11 minutes. Let's get back and start at 14 minutes. So in 3 minutes, we'll get back to you. And Hamid, by the way, while we are waiting, there was one question actually from the people, and it was about handling outliers. So the question was about, so usually it's not normal just to drop, because you can have like a really huge data set, and if you just drop lines, you can lose actually half of it. So
yes, exactly.
what you can advise to do if we have outliers, how to explore these outliers?
That's actually a very good question. I was reading the chats, I was about to answer them, but I would totally agree. The fact that I just removed them in this example is because I did it for the sake of simplicity. We have to sometimes, for the sake of simplicity, do these kind of things to make things progress fast. Because if we want to be very meticulous with data analysis, of course, this process can be much more time consuming, and we need to spend a lot of time and efforts to make sure that the whole data preparation process is done carefully. And probably we all know that data preparation is the most time consuming part of the project. So here, for the sake of simplicity, I did it like that. But of course, sometimes, depending on the case, depending on the problem, maybe even the main place to look at is the outliers. So sometimes we just need to forget about the rest of the data and just look at the outliers, because that's the interesting part, and that's where we can find some interesting things. So it's very depending on the problem. What is the problem? And of course, since data science has a kind of exploratory nature in general, maybe in first place, we're not really sure we should look into the outliers or we should look into the other parts. So that is why we always do different kind of exploratory data analysis to make sure where is the right place to look at. That's the exploratory part of data science. So I would suggest always try to look at all of the aspects of the data, either outliers, non-outliers. Try to see whether any of those parts can give you interesting insights. Sometimes we have to even keep all of them together, look at all of them together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so now time is for Q&A. We start in the following formats. First of all, I want to give some space for Judith and Gaby to introduce themselves. And then we have some questions prepared for them. And then it will be your time to jump in and ask questions. And I think the best way to do it, you can just type into the chat, and you, first of all, you will know in a little bit more about our speakers. And you can tag a speaker if you have a specific question, or just yeah, put a question. And if you're a little bit shy to ask directly, you can send a private message, for example, to me or to Bhumika, and we will ask this question for you, and we'll ask our speakers. Okay, thanks so much. I think it's clear, so let's start. The first step is introduction from Gaby and Judith.
I'll go first then. I'm Gaby. I am head of product at a tech startup, scale up. We work in business travel, and we provide a platform that actually has multiple customers. So it has the corporate and it has the business traveler as a customer.
Good. And what?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Judith. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Judith. I currently work as a senior analyst at a consumer goods company. In the past, I used to work as an analyst as well, and for a while I was also training in the analytics domain, so I was working as a trainer. So these are the two perspectives I can help with tonight, so feel free to ask any questions if you have.
Awesome, cool. And what I really love to say that we have a unique combination. Hamid is academy, Gaby's industry, and Judith has both experience. Yes, so, and not just in, but in teaching as well. Okay, then let's start. So I'm really curious. I want to start with misinterpretation of data. So it's a question for both of you, and also Hamid, feel free to jump at the end. Ladies first. So we know that misinterpretation of data happens really often. So what do you consider as a best practice to avoid this?
What I would say is that I remember Hamid asked you what do you think what's the most important aspect of visualization, and I remember 2/3 of you said domain expertise, and I think that's a very good point. You guys already pointed it out very fairly that that I think misinterpretation can happen very easily if these two parts are really separated. But by that I mean the data capabilities and the domain expertise. To me, it happened in the past when I was helping other companies, and then they asked help with their data projects. But me, I don't work for the company. I don't know what are the KPIs they are using. I'm not in that industry. They know what are the most important aspects for the business. I can help with my data skills, but I need to know in terms of business acumen what's happening there. So I think combining these two can definitely help to let's say, avoid data misinterpretation.
Cool. Gaby, what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I echo that completely. I've had it happen to me in the past quite a few times that I had a question and I got data, and then I was wondering if this was actually the data I had asked for. So I think it's two things to me. One thing is it's human communication. So that means I'm not a data analyst, so I speak in functional language. So ask me if it's unclear, or ask anyone that you work with that you have to provide something for if what you think they are asking is actually what they are asking, because they don't speak your language. A nice example is that the other day I was working with my data team, and I made the mistake of calling a report the dashboard, and they were completely confused. So it's about educating the people you work with on what's what, but also not expecting them to know the technicals that you do, because that's what you are for. You're the specialist, of course. Then I think the other thing that's most important to me is also really looking at variables together. Because what I see is that we have a hugely complex, kind of data lake where I could get anything I want, but it's very difficult to get exactly that I want to know. So really go through those variables together. So sometimes I just sit with a data analyst while they are writing the code, and we go exploring together. So maybe just invite someone to be there with you to explore it together, because it's not boring what you do. So I see a lot of people think it's boring, but I actually think data is the most sexy thing, because you can make your products work using data.
Cool. And Hamid, what do you think the cost of misinterpreting data actually is? Unmute yourself, please.
Sorry, I totally agree with Gaby and Judith about everything they said. This is actually true that in many companies, there is this interpretation gap existing because, of course, those who are working in the front line, they may not have so much technical knowledge, and they may not really care about technical knowledge. They just want to know those insights, and they want to know how they can improve the business. They can reduce the costs. So on the other hand, the data science team, for instance, they are very good probably in technical aspects, but they don't know how to communicate the information and insights. So there's usually this interpretation gap. And in data science teams, or in general, those who are working in data science area, many of them might come from different backgrounds like physics, computer science, statistics, and many other backgrounds. But something that is mostly missing here is the domain expertise. And I have read a lot of interviews that they say this is something that is missing a lot. So I would suggest just try to learn as much as you can about the operation, about the business processes, about the the data that is available, what every single attribute means. Ask questions, just learn as much as you can. When you learn about the business, when you learn about the operations, about the data, then you will see that it becomes much more clear how to work around with data, how you can even communicate the data and insights that you can generate from the data to the frontline decision makers.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah. Now I have a question that's really specific to Judith and Gaby. And actually, how is data affect the data decision that you make within your company?
Well, me first of all, at my current job, I very recently joined the company, so it's hard to make very big points here, and it's also such a complex organization with so many multiple data sources. So definitely, data is a very important key aspect of decision making. But we always have to consider both sides: the human aspect and the data driven, and then how to combine the two. So in this case, again, I would just refer back to domain expertise and data and how to combine the two together. So I'm not sure about the group composition, whether you come from more of a business or scientific background. I think both of them are equally good. I think the goal is, like also Hamid said, that try to bring these sides closer together, or at least this is what I try to consider myself in my, let's say, career, because I come from a business school background. I did not study computer science myself, so I might not be the most technical person in the group, and I'm completely fine with it. However, I know just enough to make still a very good conversation, for example, a data scientist or a data engineer, and try to bridge this gap to explain, let's say, in both languages what's really going on. So I think that's definitely an upcoming skill that could be really valuable, but it's still very difficult to find ways how to acquire it, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question, and I have to be very honest here as well. So I think if you look at reality and what you want with data, I think 9 out of 10 times what I want with the data is something we cannot do yet. So then what I see is I start asking questions and the data team starts sweating, obviously. And that's also a good sign to me, because that means we have an opportunity for growth and they have an opportunity to do really cool stuff. So in the day-to-day operations, we have a basis of data where we can actually recognize patterns, and I can trust that data because it's clean. Then on the other hand, we try to find music in the data, as our data science team actually calls it, in data that might not be clean, but then I don't make it data that I base decisions on. Or I might take a leap, because we are still a tech startup, and do something with it, but then it becomes testing or asking a customer if they want to go into a beta with an assumption where we know that the data might be faulty.
Okay, but I think I have the question that just immediately will, just jump straight to the point. So let's start, Gaby, with you, and then let some time to think for Judith. So I want to know, what was the most difficult decision you need to take when the data say one thing, but your gut feeling say, no, it's wrong. So what was the most difficult decision?
Yeah, that's I had a hard time. Actually, when you sent me that question, I've been thinking about it for a week, because actually I think I do it quite often, to be very honest. So I ignore a lot of data, to be honest, and go with a gut feeling. And that's of course based on stakeholder management, ranging from our VC to our corporate customers to our users. And qualitative research, because quantitative research is not the only thing. One, you're doing stuff you've never done before, so you can base it on historical data, or you can try to find something new. Two, I think that very often also the data that we have, because we are a tech startup, we're not a very big company, does not always satisfy me in what I want to know.
Okay.
So to be very honest, and that also leads me to make decisions that might have been mistakes. The only thing I do ask the data team is to always measure whether my decisions were the right ones or not, and then we can anticipate accordingly towards the future on that. So if you are working in a data team or aspiring to do so, I would also recommend that you really look at the decision-making process of the person that you provide the data to, because then you can go on their journey and find what they want to know and what they want to explore, but also give them a heads up when it has been the wrong decision, right? So you can still roll back.
Cool. And I see that Judith is doing this with her head, so Judith, go on.
No, I'm just definitely agreeing what Gaby is saying, and I have actually a different perspective here, because I'm not I work as an analyst, so in this case I'm not necessarily the decision maker, but I might provide data for the decision makers. So in this case we might have to be aware that we have different roles, which might require different approaches as well. So actually I would refer to one of my favorite data science professional, Cassie Kozirkov from Google. She posts quite a lot on Medium. You can find her on LinkedIn everywhere, essentially. And she wrote quite a lot of articles about analysts in specifically, and she calls them, let's say, a misunderstood hero, if I can make that point. And she highlights that she thinks that the most important virtue of an analyst is speed, and inspiring the decision makers. But it's not my job to make the decisions instead of them, or provide them a bias to take a certain approach, but to help them and inspire them to be more, let's say, data enabled in their decision making process. So this is what I would say myself. Of course, in the future, changing positions, roles, I can provide more information, but at the moment, this is what I can tell myself.
Oh.
And if I may add to that, so if you have a leader that does not think that data and the data team are the backbone of what you're doing, you should educate them and step up. Because in the end, I think you are sitting on the most valuable diamonds of the company, right? That is where opportunity lies.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah.
Cool. The second question that I have, it will be for Gaby and for Hamid, but I will ask it differently. So I start with the Hamid. So Hamid, you are teaching the future generations of business analysts and data scientists right now. So what I want to know, actually, what you think your future analysts or the future data scientists can do for the company to let the company consume data in a more simple way?
Well, when we decide to design a course, I mean, as a person, I always want to design my courses in a way that it will help students to develop themselves, imagining that it will be their future career and they can develop themselves as a business intelligence analyst or a data scientist. So I try to kind of role play with them. I try to always talk to them as a future data scientist. And I think with that is quite important, because it's first of all, it's really important to show them that this is actually a serious career option. It's not just like a course that they come to the class and pass it. They can really consider it as a future career. And it's not just any kind of career. As Gabby and Judith were just mentioning, it's actually a very quite important role in companies these days. And there is a very high demand for this position, both data analyst and data scientist. So I would say it's really important to really show the value that this kind of position can create for companies, to show the students that there is really a value in it and they can really think about it as a future career. And then I will try to train them. I will not only just about coding, because I do believe that coding is important, but also other things are as important as coding. The domain expertise, I always try to bring in the business cases, like examples related to, you know, business, marketing examples, or maybe different kind of examples in the business context. Even my course is called Data Science for Business Applications, because I want to show them the applications of data science in business. So I really want them to develop themselves as someone who can consider him or herself as a future data scientist. And if they're really interested, and if I can bring out that passion, then they can just, you know, spend some time on their own, dig deeper, and develop their skills and knowledge, and they can really become a data scientist or a data analyst. I really hope that will be the case.
Cool. We do hope as well. And as I mentioned before, that for Gabby, I want to rephrase it. So in this case, Gabby, what can data analysts or data scientists do for you to make for you easier to consume data, actually?
Take me on their thinking journey.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very simple to me, because if you present a graph to me or any visual and I don't understand what's behind it, so how you got there, then I can't make a decision.
And what do you want to see exactly? What you are missing? So if you just get a graph, what you are missing? What do you want
Talk
to
to
have
me.
more?
Don't just throw it over the fence, right? So that doesn't help me. So talk to me. So explain to me. Take time out of my calendar to explain to me what you found, because you know, it's I was actually thinking during the session of Hamid, this is super interesting, because now I understand a little bit more of the world where my data team ventures into every day. But then again, I think it should also be the case that you venture into the world of the business together, so that you have a little bit of overlap. So don't try to understand the whole business, just start with your team that you work for, the data that you are responsible for, the leader that you work with, and venture together with them. I think that will also help you visualize it in a way that is actually what they want and what they are asking from you. So what I actually do, I have a visual design background that I don't do anymore, but I actually visualize sometimes together with the data team what we want our Power BI tabs to look like.
Wow.
So cooperate.
Yeah,
just
really
ask.
cool. Yeah.
Can
Wow.
I add in here?
Sure, sure.
Just remember something that is kind of similar, because of course in academia it might be a little bit different, but we also use a lot of visualizations when we work on a research project and we want to show our results and the findings of our research project using those visualizations. And a lot of times we are also responsible to go through other people's works. And I kind of feel sometimes visualization for some people it's like something that they just want to have it there in in their report because it gives the report a much better look. That's their imagination or that's the way they understood the whole thing, but that's not really the case because a lot of times I come across different papers or reports and I see it's just like there are several visualizations one after another and many of them don't make any sense why they put those visualizations in the report because they could basically say the same thing just by writing one short sentence. So they could just write a short, very, very short sentence. For instance, they could say there are like 200 females and like 150 males in our population. They could just say that with one single sentence, but then you see they put like a whole plot to show that information. That's completely unnecessary. It's just like making the report or the paper crowded. So I would say whenever you want to use visualizations, try to use it creatively, try to improve it as much as you can aesthetically, and try to just wrap enough information in it, not too much, not too low.
Cool.
Yeah, and I want to add to that from my perspective as well. So why I sit with the team to visualize is to make things simple, because half the time I have no clue what I'm looking at. Partly because I'm not technical, of course. And I'm looking for quick information. So I have a lot to do on a day. So I'm looking for quick information that I can consume very easily, that it's going to help me to make a decision or to get another team to move forward with a project or to stop a project. So I think the most important thing is to, like Hamid says, keep it simple and just report on the thing that they are asking for functionally, right? So yeah, I would almost say when it becomes an ego thing, be careful because you're not helping your colleagues with that.
Okay. I also have a point to add because what you both of you just mentioned, honestly, I recall my first job at the very first time I got access to large data sets because I got so excited, like I have all this data to consider. I can use stacked bar charts horizontally, vertically, a pie chart, a donut, and then honestly, the BI tools don't help either because you have so many options to consider, no matter if it's Tableau, Power BI, etc. So there's so much abundance, and then the person who gets excited by data can have a very difficult time and waste a lot of time as well analyzing and get lost. Many times I had to, let's take a step back. Is this what the client asked for? Is it 20 slides or just one slide, to be honest? So yeah, Gaby says one, definitely. So in this case, what I would say, try to resist the temptation of
of going nuts.
I mean, and really try to keep it to the core business question what was asked, let's say.
Awesome. But I also just want to jump on it. Wait a second. So okay, so we're saying, for example, the business people needs answers, right?
Yeah.
So, and as a data analyst or a data scientist, you can provide this answer. So for me, the question is, okay, what do you think is the most useful format? So you mentioned it can be like graphs, visualization that answer your question, but in which format it should be delivered? What may be the most useful formats that you can advise people to start to working with? Any thoughts about this?
I can be super short on this. So whether it's a visual, a sentence, or you just telling me, if it's a story that I can follow and that makes sense, I will listen.
Great. Okay.
Fair enough. Indeed. I mean, I think we have to consider regarding the format of how is the culture, the work culture where we are currently working at. So I worked at a startup as well, a large company. There might be different, let's say, internal rules or etiquettes, let's say, to consider or to follow. Maybe somewhere they prefer more of a report style presentation. Maybe somewhere it's more, okay, I just send you an email with a few notes. So I think it's, you have to consider the business as well. But in this one, I would also just keep an open mind on current phenomenon happening online, because I read quite a lot on LinkedIn on what are the newest trends, how we are making transitions from self-service dashboards to more storytelling approach, let's say. So I always try to keep an open mind and just try to follow up with what's happening and experiment, let's say, with different formats as well.
Cool. And I think now I have a question to everyone. But before that, audience, who are there today? So I don't see any questions so far. It was only a question about the name of the person. I shared it as Kasi Kozyrkov. I shared how the spelling, but feel free to jump in and ask questions. So these people are here for you today, and you have unique expertise because you see a person who actually teaching future analysts and scientists. You have a person who actually decision maker and consume data and the rest of information that comes from data analysts or data scientists. And you see you did that is actually both of the words. So in the meantime, we are waiting for questions. Remember, there is no weird question. There is no stupid question. Maybe there is something that really itching, but maybe it's not the best time to ask. Trust me, this is the best time to ask right now. We have still 18 minutes until the end of the event to ask them. Awesome, I see the question. So I will read it out and then let's start. So it's a question, what is your opinion about making data available for everyone in the organizations? What are the advantages and what are the risks? I think it's a really good one.
I think this is spot on the most difficult question to ask as well. I think that if you are a smart organization, you make most of your data available to everyone in the company, because that will actually maybe drive innovation in your company, but also the more everybody knows, the better the decision making will go. And I'm not going to say you can be lazy as a leader, but at least it means that your teams will make the same decisions that you would make because of the fact that they are well informed. So I think it's very valuable from a human perspective. Then again, there are some kinds of information, there is some data that you do not want everybody to have access to. And that is something every company has, whether you are with 2 people or with 2,000 people. You need to make sure that you do have some level of clearance for certain kinds of data. And that is usually the data that says something that could hurt your company, that has the diamonds, so the success of the company. Or that is, for example, PII, so very personal information, personal identifiable information. So I think that is something that should not be accessible for everyone either. So we have a level of accessibility for that. We have only one person that is able to access that. And the rest of the company isn't. So I am not able to access that data, and I think that's a good thing. So I think it depends on what kind of data it is.
Okay, Judith, what do you think?
Yeah, I pretty much agree that you have to balance, let's say, of course, GDPR and other compliance issues that were raised by Gaby, and also to provide a certain level of transparency with all the employees in the organization. So, of course, it can vary a lot if you have 20 or 20,000 people, let's say, but I agree that we have to find a nice balance in between the two to make sure everyone is onboarded, everybody is aware of what's happening, quantitatively speaking, at the organization, but at the same time to do it in a safe and secure way, of course.
Yeah. And Hamid, what do you think personally? Maybe you teach something about like data governance, data lineage.
Yes. Well, I would say, well, it depends from what perspective you're looking at the problem. But if we want to think about data as a useful asset of an organization that we would like to generate some insights and useful information out of it, I would say it's better to keep this asset in the hands of those who actually know how to generate value out of this asset. Because if we make this data or this asset available to someone who has no idea how to generate value from it, then it may not be a good idea, you know. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, and then it's a little bit different question, and it's directed to you, Hamid. What's the biggest illusion that you have seen among students regarding data analysis?
I'm not really sure what do you mean by illusion, but I'm just gonna answer based on my own understanding.
Yeah, so if I may clarify, so
Sure.
usually as I'm also studying data analysis, so when I started out, I had this really flowery idea about data analysis. And then somewhere when you start exploring it, you get down to earth.
Okay, got it. So what I personally experience is it depends. I maybe could separate students into two groups. The ones that have a programming background and the ones that don't have a programming background. And in my classes, I always assume that no one knows anything about programming, and I just start from the zero. I train them the basic things in programming, and we work together and we try to develop over time. But since I just mentioned programming, a lot of students may feel afraid because they have no background in programming and they feel like this is something that is going to be very difficult because they have no idea how programming is. And I always try to show them this is not as complicated as they think or imagine, because nowadays there are so many resources available, and programming with languages like Python and R is not really that complicated compared to the languages that we may use before in the past. And that's for those students, they may face some fears to jump into this course to learn about data science or data analytics. And from the other side, those who actually know how to program, they may feel like this kind of course is all about programming. So they just want to, again, extend themselves as better programmer, and they may think that, okay, I know programming, I'm going to be good at this. Yes, that's an advantage to know how to program, but data science and data analytics is not just about programming. I think I tried to show in the workshop today that it's true that programming is important, but there is two other aspects in general that are quite important. Having some statistics knowledge and also having some domain knowledge. So I believe if everyone wants to step in this path, either data science or data analytics, they need to develop themselves in all these three dimensions.
Cool. And
if I can make
just want to ask you to add go on.
That what Hamid was saying, that all these three core capabilities are needed, but I think within this industry there are so many different paths you can take. Like you can be an analyst, but even within analyst there are many different types of analyst positions you can consider: data scientists, data engineers, BI developer. So there are so many different paths you can take. So if you are not the most hands-on coder, there is definitely something for you. If you are more considering the engineering path, there's definitely something for you. I think the struggle is more to find actually which path fits the best for your personal, professional preferences, let's say. So what I could recommend is, at least what I was doing when I was reading job descriptions, is try to compare and combine job descriptions, try to see which is the one that fits best my personal preferences and professional aspirations, and try to have conversations with people in these positions to really understand their day-to-day job, and to uncover if it's something for you. And then if it is, then find the best platforms and ways to specialize in that specific field.
Cool.
We have one more question. Sometimes business wants an analysis, but does not know what exactly, and the data analysis team does not have the connection with the business. So how do we deal with this gap when the requests are too generic besides communication?
Good question.
Yeah, good question, but I think it is communication. Try to find ways through to somehow either find a way internally how to, because for example, at one of my previous jobs, my clients had a very specific sort of a template they had to fill in when they had a request for me as an analyst. And that was quite straightforward, but not straightforward enough. So we still had to chat, and we still had to call, and we still had to discuss. So I think a certain level of communication is unavoidable, unless the question is something like, okay, total sales for 2018, because okay, that's might be straightforward, but I think usually the questions are a bit more complex. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally echo what you're saying. I think it's something that I already said as well. You're both talking in a different language. So business is a totally different language than the data team. And therefore, I think you should just be open and honest with them. And that boils down to communication, but just tell them, hey, this is too generic for me. I could give you a range of things. This and this and this and this, for example, could get out of it. Can you work with me on what you are looking for specifically? And if you're not looking for anything specific, are you okay? So validate, so then it doesn't go wrong if you do come up with something, to say, okay, I will dive into the data, I will start exploring, and I will give you a few of those things that I find there. And then we might decide on a direction together. So what I would advise here is take charge. You're the expert when it comes to the data, not the business people. They don't know, I don't know. And it actually helps them to trust you as well. So just be honest.
Cool. And we as well have a question, how would you proceed with analysis? I think it's more related to Judith and Hamid. How would you proceed with analysis when you have incomplete data or poor data quality?
If I want to give you my own personal opinion about that, well, if we can, we should try to collect more data. We should try to collect data with perhaps better quality if it is possible. Sometimes we have to collect new data because the current data that we have in our hands may not be enough. There are different data collection techniques that we can use to collect data. Sometimes we need to do like experiments, A/B testing, like collect those kind of data and add it to what we have and try to conduct a more holistic analysis, more comprehensive analysis. But if there is something, if the data quality is bad, is poor because of our own database, then maybe that's an issue about our database, and we need to communicate that with the people in the company and try to fix that issue.
Okay, and Judith, from your experience?
To be honest, right now I'm not having this type of problems, luckily. But in the past, let's say what I would say is that, yeah, about the poor data quality, I pretty much agree with Hamid. And when it comes to the incomplete data, there you have to accept that you are assuming some risk when it comes to trying to complete the data. There are, of course, I don't want to go into the details of what are the different statistical ways of imputing values to the missing ones, but you have to accept that you are assuming some risk. And I think it's important to be transparent about it when you are using it to influence, let's say, a certain decision making. So I think just to be clear about it, that's important as well, not to hide it, for sure.
Yeah, great.
May I add to it?
Yeah, go
because
on.
I had a lesson learned here, I think about a year and a half ago. I was asking all kinds of questions, and then finally my data team told me that they wouldn't be able to answer those questions because our data quality was not good enough. So it was poor, and actually we needed to do a lot of plumbing. And I remember back then some of the other people in my company did not agree that we should spend our money there, but I did think we should. Eventually we made a decision to spend money there and to work on the plumbing, because as a data team I would always I would visualize or tell the story of the risk when you don't have it, and what the potential consequences of that are, because that's also your job, right? It's not just looking at what is there, it's also looking at what's not there and what should we have, and lay that out. So I think always raise it.
Yeah. And I think as well, maybe, yeah, it's not super related to this, but like that's why I personally think the position of data engineer is coming into place, because it's their role actually to make sure that we can get access to as much sources as possible, and to make sure that all the data transformations, all the ETL pipelines running correct, and that the data scientists or data analysts receive the data in the proper format. And if it say it's a string, it's a string. If it say it's an integer, it's an integer. And you don't expect to see like false booleans that's replaced with strings like true or false in the data where it shouldn't be there, right? And I think we have the last question. It's pretty broad one. And actually, it's a question for all of you, and especially people are really interested in UDIT experience. So tips for people who want to make career change to data science, for example, from marketing and business analytics background, and what are the career prospects as a data analyst?
Good question. I think one part I would refer back to what I mentioned earlier, try to do some smart research on what are the, let's say, trending positions, what are the current needed positions, and try to engage with people who currently work in these positions and try to see if it is really something for you. I would also recommend meetups and events of these kinds, or conferences where you can even more engage and hear talks about these people. I would also refer back to my previous employer where I worked as a trainer, because I think they have very valuable webinars and resources, what you can read and further upskill yourself, and the courses as well. So you have a lot of resources online to consider and make this shift to yourself. So just try to be mindful and really clear about, first of all, clarify yourself which position or role, let's say type you are aiming for. And then what I was also doing, I just check again what I said, job descriptions. I'm looking at what are the capabilities, how can I make myself more competitive on those capabilities. What I think currently is also needed is not just the technicalities, what we discussed, but also the ability to work with multiple different stakeholders. And that's something very difficult to state on a resume. That's or prove on a job interview. So I think that's also something pretty much you are learning on the job. And but I think that's essential as well, besides the technicalities, the soft skills and the ability to cooperate. Yeah.
Okay, great. And for the rest of the speakers, any tips on this?
Yeah, sure. So I think, so to me, having all of the technical knowledge and being trained well when it comes to being able to get the data out, that is something that you will be able to have, and that you might be able to improve it somewhere, or it's not up to a level where you would like it, but it's good enough, otherwise you would not have been hired. So especially if you studied for it or you did a course, you will be fine. And that's also something you can learn on the job, because let's face it, something you don't know, you can look up or you can ask colleagues to help you with. I think also, to Judith's point, one of the more important things is that you guys could operate in the background a little bit more when data was the dusty kind of not looked at thing, but actually it has become the #1 thing that runs companies these days. So make sure that you stand out. Don't be shy. Join communities, but also just talk to colleagues that don't do anything in data. Get out there. Don't spend the whole day behind your computer. Spend at least 2 hours of your day talking to people, because that's also going to inspire you on how to handle your data. And join networks that are bigger than just data. So I'm a part of Women in Tech. Join those. They have a lot of sessions on soft skills. So I would say explore.
Cool. And any last tips from Hamid about this?
Sure. I think something about data science or data analytics I would like to say here is that background, we see a lot of people with different backgrounds that are working as data scientists, even in very big companies like Google, Uber. There are data scientists with like a background in physics or statistics, computer science. So if you have any sort of background, you should leverage that and develop yourself in other areas that I mentioned, and be sure that you can shine. It doesn't really matter where where you are right now, because as a data scientist, you are not supposed to stay the way you are. It's a never-ending process of learning, because every day you face with new challenges and you need to learn new things. So even those who are great at programming, I would say, they still need to learn almost every day or every other day a new thing. So just be confident. If you feel that you have the passion for this, kind of career, if you like to just get yourself lost in the data and just like explore there and try to just, find interesting things out of numbers and symbols, then go for it. Just try to develop yourself and you will be successful.
Thank you so much. I think it's really, really good, valuable tips. And once again, we really want to encourage people, even if you have completely different background. I saw people, for example, with PhD in biology, or just with master degree or bachelor's degree in anything else. But the sweet spot of data science is that you can operate on the edge of different actually technologies and the edge of different industries. If you are a biologist, trained as a biologist, and if you learn a little bit how to program, how to present your results, you are a really valuable and crucial asset for any biological company or any company that do something with biology. If you are a marketologist with a lot of years of experience, or if you're a salesperson and you know everything about churn, customer churn, or about A/B testing, you, with a little bit of training, you will be really valuable asset for any company who is looking to do something to improve their marketing department or to improve the performance of the sales department. And it can be actually anything. So thank you so much for being here today. Once again, our industry and academy experts. I think we can have a virtual round of applause to Hamid, Gaby, and Judith. Thank you so much. The video records will be available soon, and the GitHub Repo is open for everyone. Go explore and take a look at other repos as well. Thank you so much. Virtual applause, and see you. Yes, and see you the next time. See you in October with our next meetup. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.